everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cult Classic Movie Corner. I am back. It's a Thursday, and there's a new show. You might see a logo up there in the right-hand corner. Today's movie is going to be Blade Runner. And for that review, or conversation, I should say, I've invited a guest. Welcome, Captain Cockney Spock.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
And bollocks. Greetings to you, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I am fine, thanks. And Captain here is actually calling us from the future. So who is better to talk about a science fiction movie made in 1982 in the past? So yeah, you're calling in today from New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken.
Kia ora from lovely sunny New Zealand, where we're going into springtime. That's right. I'm 12 hours ahead, but depending on how you look at it, I'm also 6 months ahead. So indeed, welcome from the future.
Hey, that's good to hear. And tell everyone out there on my show or the Fantasmagorium channel, which I know you are a friend of, where people can find you online and what you do.
Okay, thank you very much, Mørk. I am Captain Cockney Spock, and I'm going to switch the camera off, give you guys a break. Yes, I like coffee, I like talking, and I like Blade Runner. So right now, thanks to Mørk, I'm in heaven. I'm on Captain Cockney Spock. And to the point of self-parody, I've been talking about Blade Runner. And there's more to it than one question, but quite a big question. Spoiler alert, there is a question about the nature of the protagonist. I'll let Mørk lead you into that. But let's say one of the few movies, if not the only one, can we say, that's had a question hanging over it for almost 40 years, still debated. People are now debating whether it's a question, whether it can be answered. Oh my goodness. Plus there's music, action, and philosophy. Wow.
Yes, there is a big question in this movie, and we will get into that in a little while. I'll start off by saying this movie is one of a handful of favorite movies I have. A movie I have seen countless times and know I will be watching countless more. It came out in 1982, the year I was born, together with another favorite movie of mine, also from 1982, and that is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
So 1982 wasn't that bad of a year. Also The Thing, which I did.
Yes, all on the same day for those three movies.
Yeah, couple of shows ago, I did The Thing with Dieter Bastian. Also one of my favorite movies. There's this thing where people say that you're kind of destined to love movies that came out the same year you were born. It's some kind of Hollywood magic.
Oh, maybe.
So look into that next time you think about dates and stuff. I can't really remember the first time I saw this movie. It's because it's so long ago, but I do believe it was on VHS, and I do believe it must have been the old director's cut.
Yeah,
the one that came out after the theatrical cut.
Right.
Yeah, the semi-final cut.
yeah, exactly. It was going to be the final cut, but then we thought we'd do a third one. That's not even including the work print.
And I saw, of course, the theatrical cut on television at some later point. But yeah, there's three versions of this movie: the theatrical cut, the director's cut, and the final cut that came out, I believe, in 2007.
Yeah, I'm the same, like 2007. Let's go with that. I know the director's cut was 94, but yeah, those are your broad three versions.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned the work print, of course, but I don't really think of that as a version of the movie, because it is what it is. It's work print.
You're right.
It's no one's vision. It's a kind of a work in progress. It's very cool to see it on the amazing 5-disc Blu-ray or DVD set, but it's not a version of the movie. It had like temp music. It runs long, but it's very interesting for people like me and you who go deep into this movie to have the option to watch
But thank you for that distinction, because some people are like, oh, there's only one version. What are you talking about? Does it matter?
Yeah.
And then other people shout out problem being like, no, there's 7 different versions. So for the purist, Mork is quite right. For the pedants, there's 3 versions: original, director's, final. Then there are other edits, cuts, European work print, yada yada. But they, as Mork says, well, I'm repeating now, but yeah, they are edits, they are prints, they are 3 versions. The others are extras.
Yeah, when I think about the movie, I think about those 3 versions, and of course, the final cut and the director's cut is very similar. It's more correcting things that he wasn't happy with. Ridley Scott, like the stunt double being used when Sora is being shot, and other kind of more technical fixes. It doesn't change the movie in any really noticeable way, I think.
Right, the biggest difference is between the original and the director's cut, where they add a certain sequence featuring a certain animal, which may or may not be mythical, and they remove the voiceover, which is why, in my opinion, for anyone getting a box set, I recommend you start with the latest version, the final cut, and then go back to the original, because that way you can start without the voiceover. Because once you've heard the voiceover, you can't really unhear it, and so you need the later version without it. Then you go to the earlier version with it, and then you get the whole experience.
Yeah, there's positive and negative things you can say about the voiceover. The positive thing is, I think it makes the movie feel much more noir.
Yes.
But the negative thing is that it's basically there to give the audience exposition that we are smart enough to figure out ourselves.
Right, and that's and that's why I think it works better as a secondary support. So you're like, oh, now I'm getting some more information, but broadly speaking, as you say, we should be able to get it ourselves and just enjoy the silence, the breathing in between the scenes.
Absolutely, and I will pop in the theatrical cut at odd points and just to watch that, to get a change from the other one,
right?
Because it is a great movie, and I love all the versions, but they kind of give you different things, and you have to decide which version to watch depending on what mood you're in.
Yes. Plus, if you really want to get into it, if there's different implications in each version, just like Star Wars, you could really be a purist about your internal canonical verisimilitude. And we could argue each version is a slightly different timeline because there's slightly different things going on. Or you could argue it's 3 takes on the same story, where each version is almost like a slightly unreliable narrator. Whoops. And so that's why it's become such a debate, because the big debate that we're kind of dancing around at the moment, the first discussion on it to have is, well, I guess it kind of depends on which version are you watching. So it does become quite a debate, basically. Before you start, it's like, well, which version am I going to watch? Well,
it's kind of like choose your own adventure. What do you want the the outcome to be?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, because then it's not choose your own adventure, and this is the circle we're on: implication, inference, death of the author theory. What does Ridley Scott think? I don't care. What about the screenwriter? What about the book? I don't care about the book. That's a different thing. What about the graphic novel? La 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 la. See, I'm already getting there. Every day.
Before we jump into that landscape, do you remember the first time you saw the movie, and what made you fall in love with this absolute cult classic movie? And I say cult classic because the theatrical movie didn't get good reviews. It did.
Right.
It made its money back in the box office, but it was no milk, no what do you call a money cow or a
right? No cash cow.
Yeah,
no
cash cow. Thanks. Money cow.
It didn't receive financial rewards, as you say. It barely made its money back. It got ignored at the Oscars. In fact, I've been ignoring the Oscars since 1982 because they ignored Blade Runner. Then people say, well, it was one of the strongest years ever for movies. Well, then maybe some years you need to give out multiple Oscars. I don't know. Maybe this year they should go, everything's shite. No Oscars. Go home, everyone. So it did, in hindsight, the other 2 films you mentioned on the same day, but also Firefox, E.T., it does seem in hindsight a strong year for movies.
It was a strong year.
And then conversely, some people don't like it. I've heard some people, apparently I found out they called it Blade Crawler because it's so slow. I don't think so. I think that, I mean, you can even go into that. Apart from the science fiction elements, there's a difference between an action movie and a thriller. And I like both, but I prefer the latter. I want some kind of thinking.
I agree. Yeah.
Emotions. I mean, I like pew, pew, pew. I like explosions, but I want to know why someone is pew, pew, pewing at someone. And I want to know and I want to care. So I think it's a good balance. And yeah, it's interesting because in between, this came out in 82. So it was a great time to be a young teenager or a preteen, actually, because, of course, we had Empire Strikes Back in 81. No, that's wrong. 80. Raiders in 81. Then the Star Wars double bill with Star Wars and Empire in 81. So at that point, it was like, oh my goodness, everything's brilliant. Is it always going to be this good? No. And then, unfortunately, so in hindsight, what a great time it was to be alive, to be young was very heaven. Twice I missed out on seeing it at the cinema. The pain lives with me to this day. Basically, we didn't get let in once because I was actually too young to see it. And normally I would have gotten away with it, but I was with a friend. The other time I actually got a ticket in Starlog magazine, which I still have. But so many people must have picked up on the preview ticket. I got to the cinema and I couldn't get let in, even though I had a ticket. Although, amazing coincidence, Mega Geek, who's also around on these channels, he was apparently there on the same day. So that's quite weird. Really? So basically, it took a few months until I got to see it on VCR. And then I had to wait until 94 to see it at the cinema. But no, even seeing it on VCR blew me away. But even then I was thinking, my goodness, this must have been amazing at the cinema. So yeah, the director's cut at the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square in 94 is when I finally got to see it on the big screen. And oh my goodness, it was worth the wait. So it's been an influence all that time. It actually got me into reading novels. Then the whole thing about, transmedia verisimilitude, it's not like the book. That all started with reading Star Wars and then Blade Runner and realizing the movie ain't the book. So it's been a huge influence on my life ever since. I've been a Blade Runner obsessive, and I still haven't answered the big question.
I know. But yeah, I agree with you about this movie. I don't feel it's slow either. I think it's a movie that gets under my skin. I feel like I'm there. It's the music, the cinematography, the sound effects, the acting, everything just makes this movie, to me, so believable. And Harrison Ford is great in it, and Rutger Hauer steals the entire show. He is amazing and perfect. And this movie, to me, was so influential with its style that I kind of like. I had periods in my teens where I would put on a trench coat and go walking in the rain, just listening to the soundtrack. That's how much I wanted to just live inside this movie. Yes. So yeah, it's been with me for a long time. Vangelis music is superb. I used to listen to the soundtrack when I went to bed because it's a very soothing and calm, like electronic, jazzy soundtrack. So many good songs.
Yes, it was ahead of its time. And I mean, back in 82, we
very much
had terms like ambient and chill out. Those genres of music hadn't even been invented. I think Vangelis was very much ahead of its time with the music. I mean, you could argue that music, even more than movies, is subjective. It's very difficult to debate music. Some days I like Nirvana, other days I like ABBA. It's all good. But from the first moment seeing it, and again, at such a preteen, just at 12 years, I'm like, wow, this music exists. And so this opened up the world of music, electronic music, film scores, and then even obsessively collecting, because anyone that was around at the time knows that we had to wait until 94 to get a decent soundtrack. They did not release, of all the music to never release, Blade Runner was not released until 1994. Can you imagine that? We had to put up with the orchestral version by the New American Orchestra. Praise to them for doing as good a job as they could using fucking instruments. You're not John Williams, it's Vangelis. But anyway, it's available.
It's not
now.
the same. I know.
Yeah, and there's also
I've heard both.
And there's also for the purists, there's been apparently, according to Mega Geek, well, not apparently, I've now bought it, so it does exist. A three disc re-release of the soundtrack, so you can now fill your boots. And then beyond that, not that I know anything about it, there is an Italian bootleg with even more. So yeah, yes. Music is incredible. I recommend Vangelis generally. He's famous for Chariots of Fire, but no, you could argue that any movie you take out the music, it's just not the same. But like with Luke and Star Wars, Luke looking up over the twin suns of Tatooine, it's kind of like that all the way through with Blade Runner and Vangelis. It's music, mwah, chef's kiss.
Yes, it's 10 out of 10, maybe 11, maybe 12.
It's the fictional 11 out. Yes, I want to break mathematics because the soundtrack is that good. Agreed.
I do. So let's jump slightly into the big question in this movie.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, spoiler alert. Well, anyone who knows this movie, of course, is aware of this question because it's one of the big questions, I think, in cinematic history, and that is Deckard a replicant?
Is Deckard a replicant? And as recently as 12 hours ago, I was on the show and someone brought it up. And in the chat, he's a human, he's a replicant. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. They were even debating whether to ask the question. It's amazing. The one thing that nobody can deny, it's a hot topic. 39 years later, we're all still talking about it. It's almost like the measure of a geek. How passionate are they? And what is the answer? It's still unanswered, but I think there is an answer. But yes, is Deckard a replicant? And for those of you unfamiliar, the thing that he's hunting himself. Boom. Wow.
Yes.
What do you think, by the way? Is Deckard a replicant?
I'm going to show a little clip, and afterwards I'm going to answer that. I have a couple of clips we're going to see just to break this up with some media. So here's a clip for you guys. The discussion will continue.
Rock and roll.
Yes, to me, that is one of the pivotal and very important scenes in trying to answer the question, which answer is yes, he is a replicant.
Right. And that scene is not in the original version, is it?
It's been a while, but I do not believe it's in the original version, no.
Right. And that's why this debate starts with versions, and I think almost on this hot topic, almost everyone agrees that the later the version, the stronger the implication that he's a replicant. But even there's a disagreement to an extent, because people that say he's a human say he's definitely a human in the original version. Then it becomes vague towards the final cut. But the proponents of replicants say no, he's definitely a replicant in the final cut. And it's vague in the original. So they even argue, so the agreement is it starts human, trends towards replicant, but then there's an argument about which one's vague. So certainly it does depend on the version and the insertion of that unicorn.
Yeah.
Go on.
In the book, he wasn't a replicant, but this isn't the book. Yes. It's Ridley Scott's interpretation and movie based on a book that is very different in most ways. So that doesn't really matter. The book isn't the movie, and a movie isn't the book.
Thank you, because that gets brought up so much. He's definitely a human in the book, absolutely. But what? Like in Game of Thrones, Lady Stoneheart is a zombie in the book. In the TV show, she's bleeding out on the floor. Right. Yeah. So it's a different thing. So yes, everyone clamoring. So basically, what you said, he's a human in the book. So what? The movie's not the book. He's a human in the comic book, but except it's are you reading the comic book based on the graphic novel, or the comic book based on the book, or the movie? Yeah. There's two comic books. So yes, and equally there were two screenwriters, and arguably, apparently, at least one of those screenwriters, Hampton Fancher and or David Peoples, also worked with the assumption that he's a human. But Ridley Scott, whilst filming, had the idea that Deckard's a replicant. So the argument there is, well, what about the screenwriter versus the director? It's always easier with like Tarantino because at least it's one person. I would go with probably the director because they're the auteur, but then again, they're not the ones that wrote the story. So it's unfortunate when they're not the same thing. And then beyond that, there's even a debate on the facts. Some people claim that Ridley Scott thought he was a human, or that he wanted it vague, or that he changed his mind. Now, I'm not Ridley Scott. I've never met him. I've never been in the same room, but I do have a print magazine from 1982, Starburst. I've got it right here because I was getting it yesterday. Where have I put it? Oh, it's right here somewhere. A print magazine interview from Ridley Scott from 1982, where he said very clearly, I think Deckard's a replicant. Now the counter to that,
I've never heard that before. That's very old because that's from the year the movie came out.
Right, and that's the issue because I've really learned to occasionally listen to people, take on board their views, and relax and enjoy the whole thing. But facts are facts, and I've got the interview here, and so even if he was lying, he did in 1982 say Deckard's a replicant. And that's my biggest thing at the moment, because some channels, out of respect to them, well, they're saying it's meant to be vague. You're not meant to answer the question. It's not meant to be vague. That thing is accidentally vague. The opposite of the thing, which is accidentally specific. You're not meant to answer the question at the end of the thing, who's the thing, but there is an answer. With Blade Runner, you're not meant to answer it. Now, you are meant to answer it, but no one has. It's accidentally vague. There is an answer, but no one's figured it out. But we're going to do it today. Yes, on your show, we're going to finally answer the question. You're going to get 1 million views, and then we can all relax on our cocktail.
And actually, let's get Ridley Scott to help us, because I found a somewhat recent interview where he gets the big question.
Have you got it lined up right now?
Yep. Oh yeah, I run a tight ship.
Here we go.
I know that you're no longer going to be directing Blade Runner 2. Do you expect the film to address the ongoing debate about whether Deckard is or isn't a replicant? Is that going to come up?
He is definitely a replicant.
That's what I thought was thought.
You like that?
Yes, I do. That's what I think. But I don't.
Did you win money? Did you win money on that?
I should have put a bet on it. I wish that I had.
It's a duh. It's a duh. Because he picks up that unicorn, looks at it and goes, "Oh God, he is." The whole investment Eddie Olmos through the whole movie being origami means he was there and said, I know something you don't know, that you should know, think no one else knows, is that you dream of unicorns in your downtime. And people go, what? Say, you weren't paying attention.
Yep.
Thank you. Someone's finally put it into the show. Now, you can disagree with him. You can say death of the author. You can say he changed his mind. You can say it's a retcon. You can say all those things. But nobody can deny that Ridley Scott just said very plainly, Deckard's a replicant.
Doesn't get more clear than that. And also, he says the same thing that I've always felt, because I think the fact that someone knows what he's dreaming about, because that, the silver origami unicorn. It's the same thing with Rachel, with her having implanted memories that Deckard knows of because he's spoken to Tyrell. So Gaff knows what Deckard is dreaming of, what's implanted in his head, and the unicorn in the end is kind of his ultimate fuck you. I know what you are. He's just messing with him, and Gaff throughout the whole movie is a very strange and odd character, which it's very apparent that he doesn't like replicants. So of course he doesn't like Deckard either. Even though he does a great job for them, he doesn't like him because of the fact that he is a human-like robot that he doesn't trust, he doesn't like.
I never even thought of that. Thank you. Wow, Mork, you've taken it to another level. I didn't even consider that it wasn't personal. It was actually a replicant prejudice on that was almost ahead of the curve for Will Smith in iRobot. Gaff is the one that didn't like the replicants. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mork. Boom.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
You should be on YouTube.
I should be on YouTube. Why didn't I think of that? But yeah, that's my reading of it. And there's small other things, like the amount of beating he takes in the final battle with Roy Batty. He destroys his hand, but still he manages to climb on top of the roof. He almost wins. They're equals when they're fighting.
Well, do you know, this is under debate. And again, this is where I've learned to listen to the fans, as it were, because everyone's got an opinion. And I don't want to be one of those channels that has the final answer, because then I'm disrespecting some of my own chat. And that's been debated. Some people, again, it's interesting. It's like the psychological phenomenon. There must be a term for it, but basically twisting the facts to suit our theories. Because some people go, well, of course he's a human. He got beaten by Batty. And some people say, well, of course he's a replicant. He held his own against Batty. So even that, I'm thinking, maybe, to be fair, if Deckard is a replicant, if whatever. But anyway, if he is, I would say he's probably a Nexus 5. Because if he was superhuman like Batty, and basically anyone lifting up a car might go, oh, maybe I'm a replicant. I appear to have superhuman strength. And it's never made really clear how strong or smart Deckard is. So again, thank you. You're opening my mind, because I'm not sure. I would say if he's a replicant, he's somewhere between Nexus 5 and 6. Superior
or a completely other model that's made to be more human-like and less superhuman.
Right. And then other aspects, because then, again, this is the great thing about discussing these things. I think we have taken it further. There's more than one aspect that makes replicants different. Rachel is unique because she doesn't know that she's a replicant, but then that's what's relevant to Deckard, that therefore he could be the same thing, and therefore she's not unique. So there's also... And then there's also the extra intelligence and the extra strength. There's the knowledge of whether you're replicant with the false memories, and the strength and the intelligence. There's different things for different replicants, which muddies the waters a little bit.
It doesn't, but that's what makes movies like this interesting. I don't want everything to be given to me on a platter. And I think how Ridley Scott tries to tell us that he is a replicant is something you have to interpret. You have to see it. You have to kind of follow the story, and you have to make up your own mind. He is trying to tell us that he's a replicant, but that doesn't mean that the person watching the movie has to, like you said, agree or want it to be that way. But we've heard it now from Ridley Scott's own lips. In the movie, he is a replicant. End of discussion, because that's what he made. And then
should be the case. Yeah.
Everyone else can have their opinion. Fine, they can reason with it however much they want. That's also totally fine. But that isn't what the movie maker tried to make.
That implication, inference, and that's why I increasingly think we cannot have headcanon, because then that's disrespecting the entire concept of fiction. We have to accept the movie as it's presented, and so it's good to have mystery. But if you say, well, the whole thing, when people say it's a movie, it's like, yes, I realize it's a work of fiction, but even the term it's a movie, let alone it's just a movie, is reductive. Some movies, like let's say Zulu, are movies based on real life. So yes, it's a movie, but it might be a movie based on real events. Not Blade Runner, but I'm just saying it's a movie doesn't actually answer the question. There's more to it than that. So that's the whole thing. That takes us to the central premise of all fiction, especially cinema: suspension of disbelief. It's not a movie, it's a documentary. When I'm in that cinema, they're all real people. Well, they're not, they're replicants. But the point is, they have emotions, and so I'm emotionally involved in the movie. That's the whole joy of cinema. You know, apparently, Mørk, the Death Star isn't real. It was a model, and latterly CGI. I don't care. I'll complain about any nonsense that doesn't make sense in the movie, but I'll never complain about the physics of the Death Star. Why? Because I want to enjoy the movie. Suspension of disbelief. It's so key. It's a movie. It's not a movie. It's a documentary.
Many who watch this video might not have seen the ending of the theatrical version, so let's just show that so we can have a couple of words discussed about how that movie ends.
Nice.
It's too bad she won't live.
Roll camera.
But then again, who does?
Gaff had been there and let her live. 4 years, he figured. He was wrong. Tyrell had told me Rachel was special. No termination date. I didn't know how long we'd have together. Who does?
So from there, it just goes into the credits with more scenery. If someone out there thought that those scenery shots seemed familiar, are you familiar with where they come from?
Stanley Kubrick himself. It's something. Well, I'll let you explain it, of course. But
Shining,
something Shining.
Ridley Scott was in a bind. He needed some aerial shots, and he talked to Stanley Kubrick, and he got like 17 hours of helicopter shots. So that's the same scenery from the beginning of The Shining.
Because it is very jarring tonally, but also very beautiful footage. And hey, if you're going to use someone else's footage in the movie, who to take from but Stanley Kubrick himself?
Oh yeah. But yes, you're quite right when you say it's very jarring, and the difference with the movie, because Blade Runner is a dystopian movie. It's dark, it's raining, and then suddenly you just like you go into an elevator, and then you jump cut to like luscious forests. And I must say, I like it for what it is, but I do believe the movie ends much better with just like the elevator doors closing and black screen, white fonts, credits.
Because that is ambiguous. Because even though we are now to this day arguing not only is Deckard a replicant, but about the level of ambiguity, I like the emotional ambiguity of that ending. Exactly. They walk into the lift. You don't know quite what's going to happen. They're going into their future. What is their future? We don't know. That is better. Having said that, there is a, I don't have the link, but I found it on YouTube. An alternate cut of that final scene where they're talking, and I don't know if it's just a pun not intended, but given that we've got up to 2 replicants in that car, there is a there is an alternate version where Rachel turns to him and says, "You know what? I think we were made for each other."
That's kind of, yes, that works.
I was
on many levels.
Waiting for someone to go bow 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 now bow bow, but that is out there somewhere on you. That is just Sean Young, perfect.
I will have to find that. And mention it. Of course, Sean Young is amazing in this movie. What did you think? We're not going to discuss it for a long time, but what did you in general think about Blade Runner 2049, the much anticipated and now released a few years ago sequel?
Yes, I've changed my mind about it. So much build-up that it's almost like Star Wars Episode 7. No matter what it is, it could not live up to the imagination. And so I understand why, for example, Doomcock loves Blade Runner so much. He doesn't want to see the sequel. Now, shout out Cinema Gulp, who invited me to on his show a few months ago now, 5-year anniversary, favorite film of the last 5 years. And I submitted Blade Runner 2049. But on the first view, I actually found it disappointing. Second view, not so much. Third view, still didn't like it. Shout out Cardinal Sin, who said, "Hey, Cockney, give it a 4th view. It really takes on the 4th view." I'm like, it's going to be the same movie. And Cardinal's like, the movie hasn't changed, but you have. And I was like, So, it sounds weird, but I'm totally serious. It really took on the fourth view. And the fifth view, I loved it. It's not the same. That is classic, like any sequel, like it's second album syndrome. You know, if it's too similar, if it's too different, so it's a little bit similar. It's a bit different. I would suggest it's not canon. It does have, spoiler alert, it does have Harrison Ford, does have Edward James Olmos, doesn't have Sean Young, unfortunately. It's not based on a book by Philip K. Dick. It's not directed by Ridley Scott. It's, of course, directed very ably by Denis Villeneuve. So I would say it's not canon. And another thing that's controversial, people are saying, well, finally, it answers the replicant question. No, it fucking doesn't. Again, I wasn't there.
It doesn't.
I've never met Denis Villeneuve, but I do have a citation. I can send you the link or a screenshot. Denis Villeneuve, in print, on record, said, I did not touch the question of whether Deckard is replicant. I avoided it like I avoided filming the ending of Dune. I have not touched it. The question is unanswered. And then people debate me. Yes, he did answer it in the movie. Well, he says he didn't answer it. He's kind of the director. So for the record, it's a great movie. It's not canon. It doesn't answer the question. It looks great. Whatever. Move on. I mean, now, of course, we've got...
I love it.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I liked the 2049 movie from the first time I saw it. I thought I was really cautious because I didn't know how can this live up to my expectations.
Right.
But I was taken immediately because they were so loyal with like much of the sound, the cinematography, the feel of the movie.
Yes.
I liked that they had some of the actors back. And it felt like a natural continuation of the original story. And I just appreciated getting to visit that movie universe one more time.
Yes. I mean, I'd like to see a Blade Runner 2069. And, well, basically, I'd like to see a movie where they're hunting down the Blade Runners, which is basically based on... See, the thing is about the Blade, and I keep going back to it, and we're probably running out of time, but the thing about the Blade Runner question is, as soon as people go away from the intention of the director, which is what you referred to, Mørk, it's like, well, if we're going to go into headcanon and guesswork, here's an idea collated from all the, respectfully listening to you people out there in the chat and the other channels. You know, Doomcock says replicant, end of discussion. Burnett says human, end of discussion. Gary Nerdrotic says you shouldn't answer the question. Critical Drinker says you cannot answer the question, and then whispers he's a replicant. Here's my idea if we're going to put guesses in. He starts as a human. Deckard is a human. He then gets killed halfway through the movie by Rachel because he's kissing her and he hasn't bought her dinner, so she kills him. He's then replaced by a replicant with the exact same memories. Therefore, he's a human, and then he's also a replicant. Boom, you're welcome. Good night, everyone. See, it's headcanon. It doesn't count, but if we're going to have headcanon, that's my headcanon.
Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's
got one. That's right. Interesting phrasing, because you could equally say opinions are like souls. Everyone's got one, so they can be valid. And to be fair, without assholes, we'd be full of shit. It'll be coming out the other end.
Completely.
But yeah,
it has to come out.
But ultimately, that's why we must respect the auteur. And again, it gets complex. Death of the author. What about the auteur? Is the director's different from the writer, and the writer's different from the novelist. Hence, it's going round and round and round. But just if I may squeeze in one more point, because it comes up a lot, and it came up as recently as 24 hours ago, even less than that, when people say, "Oh, well, it works better if he's a human." Now that's an opinion, so I can't change people's opinion. But especially post The Sixth Sense, I think an already perfect film is elevated to 11 out of 10, or even from 11 to 12 out of 10, because I actually think it works better if he's a replicant, because then the whole thing is, how can he be hunting his own kind? But then even within that, it's like, well, he doesn't know. How can it not know what it is? And so my concluding thought, because I can go on for hours, is remember the key line in the movie is, for me, how can it not know what it is? We've established through Rachel and through that comment that you can have a replicant that doesn't know that they are a replicant. And that's why it works. And that's why it can go both ways. If you ask Deckard, the question, is Deckard a replicant? Deckard would say no. And that's why it makes sense that Harrison Ford would say no, because Deckard thinks he's a human, but that doesn't mean that he's a human. I think I'm an excellent
and
YouTuber.
and he
but that
played
don't
him.
mean
He
so.
played him like a human. He played him like a human, and
Yes!
that
Yes!
was the intention, because he doesn't know that he's a replicant. So it's perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I like this
But this
style.
is truly this discussion truly shows what an amazing cult classic this movie is. It came out in 1982. Now we're in the year 2021, and it's still being heavily debated what the movie is. Is he a replicant or not?
Right.
All the facets, and the movie also is still very strong in terms of movie culture.
Yeah.
I'm right now waiting for this lovely thing to arrive in my home, because Dark Toys has announced and is doing a new Blade Runner 1 to 6 scale figure.
Ooh.
Which I have ordered, and it comes with lovely extras. It comes with the whiskey glass. It comes with his gun. It even comes with a small version of the unicorn, and even a Voight Kampf machine. His
Wow.
badge, the amazing Johnny Walker bottle from the movie.
Send me the link, because I've got a Roy Batty, but this is the thing, because of this debate, I thought, fuck it, I'm getting a Batty first. He's the hero. He's a poor guy getting hunted. Deckard's the villain. Which, by the way, whoever's a replicant, the point is just forget the replicant question completely. It's more of a moral question. Who's the good guy here? Who's the one getting murdered? So even before or after the replicant question is really who has the moral right to go around blasting away complete strangers.
They're basically conscious slaves, so self-conscious slaves. So it's not a good thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, I will send you the link for that figure. I'm also going to put it when this show broadcasts. I'm going to put it in the chat. It is still available to order from Toys Wonderland.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
There's your way, Betty. Nice.
I've seen things. I've seen this Cockney Betty. I've seen things you wankers haven't believed. I've seen.
I'm sure he's seen a lot of stuff. It's good being an adult and having toys. I like it.
Gosh,
so I'm gonna wrap up this show. It's been a great discussion, Captain. I think this was both enlightening, and we got to discuss it. We didn't have much to disagree about, but people don't always have to disagree. That works.
I'll do better next time.
Yeah, well, let's pick something I love and you hate, or vice versa next time, and we can go at it. Or we can do that over at your show.
We'll get Scott. Basically, Scotty R37 is obviously big on the Fantasmagorium. One of his least favourite films is one of my favourite films, but separate from that, one of the best films ever, Donnie Darko. So if you ever want to show fireworks, get Scotty and I together talking about Donnie Darko, and we'll educate you together.
Sounds like a plan, because that is also a cult movie. So I was thinking about doing that on the show. I like it. But yeah. You will be welcomed back on this show at some later point when we find a fitting movie to discuss. Thank you so much for coming, and everyone out there, please do find Captain Cockney Spock's show on YouTube. I'll also put a link in the live chat. And until next time, peeps, remember, stay cult.
Don't be a replicant.